All right, guys, Josh Bendosky, you know me, Bendosky Power Fishing, and normally we're talking all about fishing on this channel, but today I'm going to share with you an interview with a guy whose life is like a movie. Huge business success. His company has over $43 billion in assets under management. And that's right, I said billion with a big old capital B. And on top of that, he personally went on extremely dangerous mission to rescue children all over the world. Now, Paul has a phenomenal message of healing that he's going to share with you, and we are going to start pushing this message all over the place. So if this resonates with you, and this message definitely resonates with me because I have 4 young children, and so I love what Paul's doing, and I love the ability to share his message. Now, we're going to push this all over social media, so at the end of the video and down in the description here, we will put in his social media link so that you can follow Paul on his phenomenal mission to help heal the world.
Brief history in my business career. I'm somewhat of what you would call a serial entrepreneur. From a young age, I wanted to be a business owner. But my dad said, Paul, business owners have to kiss butt and you're not very good at that. So he encouraged me to be a doctor, and I wanted to be a heart surgeon on children. I wanted to be a pediatric cardiologist, and got in a major car accident, severed the tendons in my hand, didn't know if I'd have a dexterity to be a surgeon. So changed my major to business and finance, and I identified some mentors in person, also mentors on audio programs and books that changed the way that I thought about myself, changed the way that I thought about success, and helped me understand the power of the mind in feeling into intuition, and in understanding that every action, every word, every thought literally is creating a world of abundance or scarcity, of happiness or sorrow. Your future is 100% determined by the thoughts that you maintain and your words and your actions. And once I understood that, I realized that it didn't matter that I didn't have the education that I wanted. It didn't matter that I didn't inherit millions of dollars. What mattered is that I had a vision and a dream of where I wanted to be. And so my first successful company was the Midwest Center for Stress and Anxiety. I was the marketing arm for that. I owned the Midwest Center Marketing, and that was totally in line with what I wanted to do in helping people change their hearts and their minds and break free of the chains that were holding them back. And most of the chains that hold us back, most of those anchors that are, and those hooks that are in us that are pulling us down, most of them are right here. Very seldom are those hooks physical things in any way. And in fact, so many of us deal with trauma as children, and I had over 50,000 people a month calling in off of this infomercial to help them with anxiety and depression disorders to the point where they were debilitating. We had an audio program and a workbook that would help people change the negative habit patterns of thought that were creating those challenges in the first place. In fact, if you can imagine this big ugly tree, and this tree is anxiety and depression, and there's all kinds of branches that are manifestations of it. Everything from physical things like irritable bowel syndrome, numbness in your hands and feet, heart palpitations and dizziness and uncomfortable feelings in groups of people. I mean, the list goes on. And that wears down on your body in so many ways. People will say, "Oh, Paul, I went to the doctor and I have a chemical imbalance. That's why I have to be on Zoloft and Prozac and all of these drugs." And my answer is this: what you need to understand is that your mind is so powerful that it can. Here's an example we can all understand. Let's say that I'm here with a bunch of teenage boys, and we're just hanging out and talking, and a bunch of beautiful women walk in the room and do something crazy, take off their tops or whatever. Your brain releases a chemical measurable in your bloodstream that changes how you feel and how your body reacts to it. This is the same thing with those negative habit patterns of thought that are creating anxiety and depression and all those other issues. Yes, there are chemical things going in your body, but you have to understand your mind is so very powerful. And so helping people change those negative habit patterns of thought was so fulfilling. I personally, over that 10 years of running the company, I personally spoke to, I calculated somewhere around 20,000 people over that 10 years, because I loved getting back on the phones with my team, and we had a personal coaching program that would help people overcome, if sometimes the very thing that we're fighting stops us from getting over it. For example, in the case of anxiety and depression, the worry and the what if thinking and the negative expectations, these were all things that would just hold people down to the point where they didn't even believe that they could do anything about it. And they would have the tools, they would have the workbook, but they didn't even believe it would work for them, so they wouldn't use it. So for those people, we would line them up with a personal coach. And this personal coach was not a therapist, psychiatrist. This personal coach were people who had gone through our program, who had used those techniques that we taught to overcome the anxiety and depression. You would think, well, what do they know? Well, they have the missing ingredient that most people don't have, which is the ability to give that belief that you can move forward, that you can create changes in your life. And so in doing so, we had a 97% success rate with the personal coaching program. We had a 100% money back guarantee. Less than 3% of the people said that they didn't have real long-term change and were able to live a normal life again. So that was my build up, and I sold that company when I was 29 years old. Used that money to start investing in real estate. Realized if I didn't hire a guy smarter than me, I was going to lose all my money in real estate. So I put together a good team. Actually, I started out with one partner named John Pennington. Magnificent man, huge heart, lots of integrity. And you ask John about how we became as successful as we did. Right now, our investment funds together that we put together is over $43 billion in assets under management. That's a huge number. And John tells this story all the time. He said, yeah, in the beginning when Paul and I were just starting, we had this office that was so small that when we backed our seats up together, we would bump seats because it was so tiny. And we were in there putting some deals together, and we were building a business with integrity, because we knew that we weren't qualified to run a multi-million or multi-billion-dollar company. But we knew if we build a business right, we did it with integrity, and had the vision of where we wanted to go, we would attract the right people. And so we would be in there on the phone, and we'd have a deal where we needed like $25,000 by Friday, and John would say, okay, Paul, we got this deal, we need $25,000. I'd be making phone calls and calling some investors to see if they want to invest with us on this project. And then I would turn around halfway through and I would say, John, we're going to be $1 billion fund, like this, put my finger on and he would say, okay, Paul, look, we just need $25,000 by Friday. And so he talks about that, how that vision of where we could be, and mentally understanding that and focusing on that and being grateful for it before it even happens creates this energetic attraction that brings the right people and the right circumstances into your life that are in line with your dominant thoughts. And that's what made the difference. We were able to build it right, create something where we could attract amazing partners. Some guys who you would not even believe the pedigree of some of the team members that we brought on. And in doing so, we're able to build a beautiful empire that I retired from in 2017. I made a decision in my early 20s, after talking to a mentor of mine, that I would donate 20% of my money and 20% of my time to charity, to making a difference in the lives of others. And I decided that I would focus that charity money and that time with children. I donated time with the Ronald McDonald's House, up at Primary Children's Hospital, One Life at a Time, a lot of these different charities. And I served on the Make-A-Wish board of directors for 7 years. That was a beautiful experience in helping children get a wish that have some serious illness, very life-threatening type situations. And it was beautiful because with Make-A-Wish, we found that some of these children, by giving them this wish of going to Disneyland or something like that, they got a new hope on life. Just achieving that wish just gave them this energy, and the success rate in them recovering was super high. And that was beautiful to do so. I've got friends today with Lamborghinis and Ferraris that will donate those cars and let kids ride in them for their Make-A-Wish wish, etc. And so I went down this road, and our Attorney General, Sean Reyes, dear friend of mine for many, many years, introduced me to the world of child sex trafficking and how horrible that was. And he was very much involved in helping to eradicate that. And they needed my help on some missions. They said, hey, you fit the perfect profile. Unfortunately, the majority of demand for sex with a 12-year-old in Latin America comes from wealthy business owners who live in the US. And they needed me to go undercover to help with this plan that rescued 127 children in Colombia. They made a movie. I'm an executive producer of the Sound of Freedom movie, starring Jim Caviezel. Jim plays the part of Tim, the Homeland Security agent who recruited me, and that changed my whole life. I'm sitting on this chair, and this 11-year-old girl, not much taller than I was, standing in front of me with tear stains in her makeup face, scared to death. And I thought, this is crazy. Every cell in my body wanted to just hug these kids and say, you're going to be fine, you're going to see your parents. And I couldn't say that, and I took her little hands and I said, está bien, it's okay. And they went back in the house. And the most beautiful moment of my life up to that time was after the agents came and stormed the party and arrested everybody, and the Child Protective Services people came in with the children, and they started laughing and singing with the children. And that sound of freedom changed my whole life. I started crying, and I turned to Sean and I said, bro, this changed my life. I've spent years making money, making rich people richer. Now I've done a lot with charity, but that was powerful. How can I help? And I had some training in the past that would make me somewhat safe in a dangerous place. It's never safe there. But I was able to say the right things to convince these guys that they should bring these children out. And since that time, I've led and been involved with over 70 undercover rescue missions in 15 countries. About 5 years ago, we separated from the original foundation that Tim and others were working with, and started the Child Liberation Foundation. It sponsored a lot of those rescues. It helped to fund other child rescue missions that were other foundations as well. In fact, we're selling this home this month, and a large percentage of the proceeds are going into that foundation, into the Child Liberation Foundation, which will continue to work on eradicating child trafficking. So that's how I got into that space. So many times we'll go into these countries, and in fact, all the time we'll go into a country and we start by creating a relationship with the head of the federal police and the president of that country, so that you can't trust the local cops, unfortunately, because so many times they're not paid very well in these second and third world countries, and some of them have been involved with the traffickers. But we get people who were vetted by some of the U.S. agencies. We also make sure that there's aftercare that is set up for the kids. But unfortunately, because of the demand coming from wealthy Americans, it's much easier for us to capture the attention of these traffickers. In fact, we were undercover in Latin America just a few months ago. I'm not going to say the country, but the head of the federal police is a good friend, and I went down 6 different times with a bunch of our team members and infiltrated a bunch of different trafficking rings. They took down 3 of them while we were there, and I'll tell you an example of one of them. And I think this is important to understand some of the things that are going into my book and how we're able to find these children. We flew into the country. The federal agents said there's some trafficking that's going on in this certain area of downtown. In fact, they had picked up a little girl who had just turned 15 years old, and she had been sold to another trafficker in Peru who was making her earn $1,000 a day, otherwise she would get beat up. One day she didn't bring in that much and she ended up in the hospital, and that's when we were able to find all the pieces and put that together and give her the help that she needed. But in doing so, they found out that there was a section downtown that she was being sold out of, and so they took me and some of my team members down there and dropped us off. And just like every mission, I don't follow logic and protocol. I follow this. You can call it God, you can call it karma, you can call it the universe, you call it whatever you want to. There's a higher power very interested in us doing good, and there's a higher power that is not okay with an 8-year-old being sold for those horrible things. And so it's easy for me to have unwavering conviction that I'm going to find those children. And so we get dropped off into this area downtown, and there's this courtyard. And I'm standing there in the middle of the courtyard, and I'm looking. I'm like, okay, drug dealer, prostitute, and I'm looking around. I'm just listening. And down this alley, I see this girl, and she's leaning against a wall with her foot up against the wall, and I could feel it immediately. That's the one. That's who I need to talk to. So I grabbed one of my guys, and we went up and we started talking to her. I walked up to her and I said, "¿Cómo se llama? You know, what's your name?" And she answered, I don't know if you can put that on video, Effie. And she said, $10, like $10, right? To have sex. And I said, no. And I pull out a $20 bill, and she goes, "Oh, dos Effie?" I said, no. I said, I explained in my broken Spanish that I have a friend, wealthy friend in the U.S. that's coming down looking for things he can't find in the U.S. and some younger children for his party. And I said, I'll pay you $20 if you can get me in touch with somebody. He goes, "Oh, no, I don't know anything about it." I says, "Okay." I put it in my pocket, and I knew she knew something. So I'm walking down around the corner, and 2 minutes later, she comes down. She goes, come here. So we follow her. I grab one of my guys. We go up around this other alley, down this corner, and there's these 2 wooden doors, and these guys sitting out in front with their arms folded, and it's like an old beaten up hostel sign there, and she talks to them, and they say, "Oh yeah, this is what you want." Yeah. So I pay her the $20, and I give them some cash, and they open up the doors, and there's a little girl that just turned 15 that was sitting there, and some younger ones inside. And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what our boss wants." And I gave them some extra cash, exchanged contact information with them, and made sure we weren't being followed. Went back to the safe, the van the federal officer was in, and I had geotagged the location, and he said, "That's exactly where that girl said she was being sold out of." I knew there was something still going on. What's crazy, they didn't tell us that was where it was. They just dropped us off in the general area, and less than 5 minutes, by just listening, we were able to find it. And then he said, "Okay, let's drive. There's another place that we've been told, the federal police have been told that we got a tip that there's a salon doing nails and stuff, and in the back there's a massage parlor, and there's children that are being sold out of there. So we drive to this other area of town, and he pulls up and he goes, "Oh crap." He says, "It's been closed down. We got this tip about a month ago, and it looks like they've already closed down all of the stuff. There's the spa is gone, everything else." And I'm just listening. And I said, "Wait, stop." He goes, "Stop? Yeah, there's nothing here." I said, "No, stop." So they stopped, and I get out because I could feel there was something still going on. We get out and we walk, and I stand in front of this place that used to be a nail salon. I looked left, looked right, and there's a restaurant next door. And I walk into the restaurant, and I go up to the manager. He goes, "Oh, you want a seat?" I said, No. I said, there's supposed to be a massage place here, and I can't find it anywhere." And he says, "You have an appointment?" I freaking knew that place was still there. And I said, "No." He goes, "Oh, I don't know anything about it." I said, "Okay, figure, I'm gonna find this place." So I walk out in front, and I'm looking, there's some people walking by, back and forth, and I see this lady. Again, I'm just listening, that's all. And she's walking with her dog. And I say, hey, can you help me with something?" "Oh, yeah." I said, "I've got an appointment for a massage, for like a real special place. It's supposed to be here. I can't find it. There's no signs or anything." She goes, "You have an appointment?" I said, "Yeah." So I kind of lied a little bit, but she makes a phone call, and about 2 minutes later, this madam comes down, opens up these 2 steel doors, and takes us down this hallway, this path, and then up these stairs and down. I mean, it was a maze getting back into where this place was. And there was a center area of this massage parlor, and there was rooms around the outside that had massage tables and beds in them. And then she proceeds to take out a menu and start showing us pictures of the girls and prices of what they would do. Stuff happens, and it's sick, and it's sad, and we got her contact information, geotagged the location, and the feds were able to go in and do a sting and rescue those children as well. And in fact, just on that one day, those guys got 25 years in prison. Most importantly, we were able to get contact information from some of the guys that have been down there and do some of those arrests as well. So this happens. I've done this 70 times, but I've run up against a wall. I'm thinking, okay, one child being sold is unacceptable. 8 million is beyond comprehension. I can't even fathom that number of 8 million children. There's more today, and I'm not talking about children being abused at home, which we're going to talk about in a second. I'm talking about just sold human beings. There's more today than all 300 years of the transatlantic slave trade put together. And people think that slavery disappeared at the time of Abraham Lincoln. It's worse today than ever. It's just dark and underground, and a lot of it is children. And so recently, I've had some big changes in my heart and what I want to do. There's some guys that are way better than me at going undercover, at finding these children. There's Navy SEALs and Green Berets that have way more training than I ever had. So I thought, what is the best thing that I can do? If my goal is to eradicate child trafficking, is it going to happen by throwing millions of dollars more into a bunch of undercover rescue raids, 20 children at a time, 40 children at a time, 100 children at a time? Yes, it makes a difference to those children. But how do we change the problem? How do we fix the demand for this? And I started doing some studying and really trying to understand where this was coming from. And I uncovered some numbers that make 8 million small. So yeah, there's a huge number of children being sold, and there's upwards of 40 million if you consider all of the people in slavery today, women, older, etc. However, when you're looking at where the potential demand is coming from, here's some staggering numbers. 20% of all men in the US, and higher outside this country, but 20% You're in a room with 5 guys, 1 out of every 5 of them has experienced sexual violence in their life. 20% of all men here in the US. And 1/4 of them, now if you figure that there's 8 billion people in the world, there's approximately 4 billion men, 4 billion women, somewhere in that number, and 20% of that, of 4 billion, that's 800,000 men. 800 million, sorry, 800,000, that's tiny. 800 million men who have experienced sexual violence. 1/4 of them, 200 million, have experienced it under the age of 10 years old. So there's the problem. You've got generational abuse. You've got people who as a child, as a young child, have experienced that type of violence. In addition, the numbers of physical and verbal abuse are through the roof when you're comparing it to just even that number. And with women, the number's even higher. You've got 40%, double of all women who have experienced sexual violence. And 1/4 of all women have experienced sexual violence as a child. These are massive numbers. And so I started praying about this and meditating about this and feeling into it and saying, how do we fix this problem? And I came to understand that the Child Liberation Foundation was not just here to help pull a 10-year-old out of the clutches of a trafficker in Honduras or Ecuador or wherever else. The Child Liberation Foundation should also be here to help liberate the child inside of a 40 or 50-year-old man or woman, or even, here's a crazy number. The average age of somebody who comes forth and says, either remembers or first verbalizes that they were raped as a child or abused as a child, the average age that they come out with that is 52 years old. They've lived 30 years of their adult life holding this pain inside. They've raised their children holding this pain inside. Their verbal abuse, their physical abuse, and their sexual abuse are coming out in moments of anger or times where their own trauma is creating trauma in the lives of others. Hurt people hurt people. Does that make sense? If you've been hurt, if you have trauma, then that's much more likely that you're going to create trauma in others. Healed people help to heal people. And so I thought, I want to put my focus and my energy on helping people heal. How can I do that? How can I do that? I can have healing retreats that we're building in different areas where people can come and learn how to let go of their trauma. We have men's groups that they're putting together. One of my dear friends, Jimmy Rex, has done a bunch of undercover work with me in the same state of mind. With his heart and his mind, he thought, how can I make a long-term change? And he has an amazing story. He has when we were doing one of the undercover rescues, he was about ready to head out, and he had a girlfriend that was with him at the time, and she said, Jimmy, this is super dangerous. Why you? Can't they do that? And his answer was, we are the they. And so he created a foundation called We Are the They. And he has men's groups that come together that learn about integrity, that learn about letting go of this trauma that they had as children, of cleansing their minds and their hearts from all of this stuff that would create that generational trauma. And I believe that the tsunami of demand that is creating the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world with child sex trafficking and human trafficking as a whole, I believe that demand comes from a combination of a few things. Number one is personal trauma. Trauma as a child, being raped, being abused in some way where that energetic connection with other people is really skewed. And another thing that I'm going to hammer on right here is pornography. Now, almost everybody watching this video right now has seen pornography. Just because you've seen pornography doesn't mean you're going to become a pedophile. However, every one of the guys that were selling these children or buying these children started with a hardcore addiction to pornography, wherein with that addiction, just like any hardcore drug, they needed something harder to have that same fix. And for some of them, something harder was a little bit more grotesque, some, rape videos or whatever. For some of them, a little bit harder was a little bit younger and a little bit younger. And pretty soon, they were fantasizing about something they wouldn't have even thought was attractive 5 years ago. And then they're acting out on these horrific fantasies. That's what's creating the demand, together with the childhood trauma. And so when you're taking a woman from a divine feminine to an object, you start going down a dark road. And so changing how people perceive other people, changing how they perceive themselves, helping them understand that all of us are connected. All of us are truly brothers and sisters. And understand that energetically and spiritually, we are connected to Mother Earth, to each other, to God, to the universe, everything. We are connected. And when we can start feeling into that and having those things, that light of truth, that intuition that we were all born with, that will lead us to our goals and our dreams and lead us to a healthy, happy life, most people discount those intuitions because they know not from where they came. And when you understand that they come from a place of infinite truth and you learn to trust them, then it can help guide you in your life in a way that can open up infinite possibilities. I believe that my words and words of other people who have been in the darkness, who have seen the darkest, deepest, most despicable parts of human nature, which I have, that can come out from that and say, okay, let's talk about the light. Let's talk about healing. Let's talk about fixing generational trauma. I believe we can help raise the vibration of mankind as a whole. We can help people turn to the light in their life and shed the addictions and shed the perspective that we have on the rest of the world and our perceptions of ourselves and other people and how we treat them. And we can let go of our ego, let go of that pride, tune into unconditional love, and we can create healing. In fact, a quick note on unconditional love. People ask me, Paul, how can you sit face to face with a trafficker selling you a child and have them not see the anger in your face and have them see the hatred for who they are? And my answer surprises people. I tell them it's because I love them. I say, how can you do that? They're selling an 8-year-old. I love them. Now, I love that 8-year-old and I love their innocence even more, but I unconditionally love that trafficker. And I feel really bad for whatever happened in their life that made them think that that was okay. I've come to an understanding that if I'm ever judging another human being, whether it's for taking advantage of me in a financial condition, or whether it's for cutting me off on the freeway, whether it's for being angry at me at the store for whatever it is. I mean, or for selling an 8-year-old child. I've realized that if I'm ever judging another human being, there is a 100% chance that I don't have all the facts. I have no idea if that guy that was snippy at me at the store, if his wife just left him, or if his daughter's dying of cancer. I don't know. I don't know if that guy selling me a child, if he was raped as a child. He likely was raped as a child. He was likely beat. He was likely in a super horrible position in his life. And he likely made a whole bunch of really bad decisions based on that trauma and other things that got him to the point where he thought that it was okay to sell me a 10-year-old. But I can't judge him. I can do everything in my power to ensure he's never going to hurt another child again. but I can't judge him. And so this is the world that we can get to. We can get to the place of unconditional love. We can get to the place of unwavering faith. And we can create a world of peace. We can create a world of abundance. I believe we are that close. I believe we can get there. So many people look at the world and say, there's no way. God's got to come back and wipe the world clean because there's no way we're going to have world peace with where we are right now. No, I think there's a lot of good in everybody. And I think there's a lot of trauma in everybody. And that trauma comes out in so many ways. And if I can do things and say things and set up a foundation, set up a platform, set up an environment that allows people to want to change and give them the tools to do so, I truly believe that we can help heal the world. As I'm really contemplating what has to happen to help make this transition happen, I'm going to teach people how to let go of their trauma. I'm going to teach people about the darkness. I'm going to teach people the tools that they need to learn, to grow. And there's a lot of great teachers and motivators out there. But I realized that step number one needs to be helping people feel and recognize the spirit of truth. We're in a world of massive confusion. We've got fake news everywhere. We've got fake news on the left. We've got fake news on the right. We've got politicians that are truthful and other politicians who are not. We've got doctors who are telling us the truth. We've got doctors that are lying to us. We've got church leaders that are preaching the word of God from their heart. We have others who are coming from a place of ego and pride and are not teaching us principles that would help us to really get closer. And so the question is, how do we differentiate truth? How do we make decisions in our life? We can't even believe what we see on TV. I don't know if you've seen it. They can make total fake videos. They can adjust everything. I mean, 15 years ago, I made a little calendar for my mother-in-law. Her dog was named Miko, and she is a little Shih Tzu. And so for Christmas that year, I put her dog with family pictures all over the world, right? He was in Jerusalem, and he was in Spain, and he was in Portugal, and he was all over. He was by the pyramids of Egypt, and all of these world wonders and stuff. And he was just sitting there, this dog. How did I do that? Just Photoshop. It was super easy, right? I could make it look. You could zoom in, and it would look like that dog was really there in front of the pyramids, right? That was 15 years ago. The technology today, and people being able to just put whatever information out that they want, it's super difficult for us to really understand what we need to do. And if our goal is to let go of this trauma and to hold on to light and hold on to truth, we need to be able to feel what that truth is and be able to listen. In the first chapter of my book, Are You Listening? It's not Are You Listening, but Are You Listening? The first chapter talks about an experience I had in my early 20s where I met a man named Jerry Prine, P-R-U-E-N, I think you'd say it Prine. Anyway, Jerry was a magnificent man. He died in 2010, but he read on a third grade level, never graduated from 8th grade, and was called stupid his whole life. Because of his inability to read, he started trusting areas that most of us just kind of set aside. He ended up inventing over 300 life-saving medical devices. He was the inventor of the original software that IBM was using for voice recognition and other things. He put that together because he didn't know how to read and write, and so he wanted to put together voice recognition. And I went to lunch with him, and he said, Paul, he said, you could have an IQ over 200 if you wanted. And I said, no, I'm really not that smart. He goes, no. He said, the difference between me and you is that I listen better than you. I said, you listen better than me? He said, no, I listen better than you. And then he asked me a question. He said, do you think that I'm the inventor of those medical devices? I'm like, is this a trick question? I said, you have the patents, right? He goes, yeah, I do. I said, well, you're the inventor, right? He goes, no, I'm not. I said, you stole them? He goes, well, kind of. He said, how long has the universe been around? I said, millions and millions of years. He said, billions upon billions of years. He said, those medical devices were invented billions of years ago. I was a better listener than you. And he said, once you understand that we live in a world, in a universe of truth, that we are all connected in ways that you can't measure with our current technology. We're connected heart to heart to heart with everybody on the planet. We are connected energetically to the earth, to the universe, to the past, and to the future. He said, when you understand that and you learn to trust, then you can be led to a world of abundance and happiness like you can never imagine. That changed my life. And I was able to use that to help direct me in so many areas. And so book 1 will be called, Are You Listening? Book 2 is going to be, instead of just that we're a receiver, that indeed we're a transmitter as well. That it's not the world, the law of attraction. It in reality is the law of creation, wherein every action, every word, every thought is creating a beautiful world in front of us, and talks about the importance of controlling those negative habit patterns of thought and things that we can do to adjust that. Our subconscious mind is just collecting all of this evidence, whether good or bad, about ourselves, and helping to lead us in happiness or habits or addictions or whatever that we want in our life. And so being able to control that and control this and create a world of abundance, that's what that's all about. So I'm excited about sharing those books. One in the future is going to be talking about unconditional love and how to really tune into that and forgive yourself unconditionally, and then forgive others. You can't love another person more than you love yourself. People say, oh, I've got Christ-like love for everybody, but then they look in the mirror and they say, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid. No, you need to learn to love yourself and forgive yourself in order to truly love and forgive others and live in a world of peace. I've hid my message for the last 10 years because I've been doing the undercover work. I haven't had a Facebook active. I haven't had any social media of any magnitude, and I haven't shared these stories. Now that I'm here sharing, I would be honored to speak on as many platforms as possible. If you have a group of influencers, world influencers that you've put together, I would love to come in and be a keynote speaker. I would love to be on a podcast. If you've got connections with people with large podcasts, I would love to be on those podcasts. I believe my words can heal. When the books are out, then I believe those will help heal as well. And I'm okay if you take my words and my messages and write books about them yourself. This is not about me. We've got 8 billion people in this world to help heal. And I believe we can by taking these messages of hope and creating this beautiful world of abundance for more people.